Hi everybody, it's Leslie Denny here on the Leslie Denny Fitness channel. If you like what you see here today, please subscribe. Today what we're going to do is a very short video for specific stretches, and it was actually requested by a friend of mine because he's a golfer and has golfers that he golfs with. And so when I started looking it up, I found that a lot of golfers' stretches can be very applicable to a number of other fitness endeavors. They can be great stretches for people that need work, especially in their upper body, but it's also great for tennis, cyclists, as well as runners and lacrosse players. So the list is endless. And I think the bottom line is if you enjoy stretching, especially through the upper body, you're going to probably enjoy this series. So the first thing that we're going to work on is a thing called Chakravakasana, or cat-cow flow. My fellow yogis know what this is. And you're going to come to your hands and knees, and you want to place the hands directly under the shoulders, knees are under the hips. And on the inhale, you're going to just slope and slide that spine in towards the mat. And on the exhale, slowly arch it out. Now, the tendency is actually to primarily work by arching the areas that are most susceptible to the actually sinking into the pose. So for instance, as I'm dropping my chest in, I may really pronounce kicking my tailbone up and out and really working that lower lumbar spine. But what I also want to do is roll those shoulders open to get as much stretch through the thoracic as I can. And then as I roll the shoulders forward, tuck that tailbone under. So we're just going to do that a couple of times, and this is a really great way to warm up the spinal column. We're warming it up through flexion and extension. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be doing a little bit more lateral work for the spine, and this is an additional good warm-up. So once I bring it to neutral, I'm going to start circling around my midsection of my body, and see I'm still working through flexion and extension, but this time I'm giving myself a little bit of lateral work on the spinal column, and then I'm going to change the direction going in the opposite way. Just breathe comfortably is the most important part. So that's the beginning. And then when I come to my seated posture, what I'm going to be doing is actually a chest stretch, very similar to this. It's kind of a modification of it for people that like to be in the chair. And what I'm going to do is on the inhale, open my elbows out, and on the exhale, bring it forward. And you want to notice that I'm really trying to arch my back here, and then I'm trying to round the back when I move back there. So inhale to open up, and exhale to close it back in. And I'm going to do that just 2 or 3 more times. If this or any of the other postures are feeling really especially good to you, or you feel like you need the work, feel free to do it a little bit longer. So once I finish from there and I relax, what I'm going to do is move into a chest expansion. And I'm going to move into a child's pose to do this, but let me give you a couple of cues. You can do it either upright seated, standing, or child's pose the way I'm doing it. And you might also want to use a strap if you're really tight in the upper back. So when I move back into my child's pose, I'm going to go ahead and grab my strap, and I've doubled it up a couple of times. Hold my hands a little closer than shoulder width apart, and then just very slowly start to bring those arms up. And I'm working at kind of bringing those shoulder blades inward and stretching through the chest. So I would hold this posture for maybe about 3 or 4 breaths, maybe longer if it felt good. And then again, you can do that upright seated, or you can do it from a standing posture. So the next thing that I'm going to be doing is what we call cow face pose, or Garudasana, and I'm just using the arms on this one. I definitely use a strap on this. So as I grab my strap, and I've got it doubled up, I'm going to take with my left hand and bring it behind my head. Then I'm taking the right hand behind, and I'm trying to draw my hands as close together as possible. I'm going to swing around really quick so you can see my back body here. So that's really a good stretch for my shoulders and my arms because I'm a little bit tight today. And I'm going to keep my chin lifted up and out from my chest. Once I'm there, I'm slowly going to lean forward until I feel like, okay, I've got a good stretch going here, but I'm not forcing myself. So I'm just going to hold the pose here for a couple of breaths. You don't want to bring the chin down because that creates a lot of kind of discomfort for the back of your neck. And I'm feeling the stretch through my triceps on my left arm here and right in the shoulder on my right arm. Then as I lift back up and out of it, I release and I'm going to switch it to the other side, holding on with the right hand, hand over head, and then grabbing from behind until I can feel my hands are as close as I can bring them, and then slowly lean forward into it. And I'd hold this posture for probably about 3 or 4 breaths, longer if it's comfortable, and if it feels really uncomfortable, just draw out really quick. And then releasing from there. Then, for especially golfers that use kind of the wrist action here, even though I'm not a golfer, so I think you're supposed to keep the wrist kind of solid, but you guys can figure that out. I'm going to go ahead and pull my fingers towards me so that I get the stretch through the base of my wrist, but then what I'm going to do is draw my thumb down in and pull the thumb in just to the point of gentle resistance, and maybe pull the fingers in too, and that gives me a great stretch through the forearm as well. So I would do that on both sides. Thumb is optional, and then draw the fingers in until you start to feel that stretch through the top. Then the next one is actually designed for shoulders and the low back. And this one's a tricky one, so I'm going to give you a couple of additional ideas with this one. In yoga, we call this Janu Shirshasana. And as I extend out through my left leg and I'm pointing out through the heel of my foot, I'm going to draw the sole of my right foot to the inside of the thigh. When I'm reaching with my right hand, I'm reaching towards that foot that's on the left side. If I can't reach it, I'm going to use my strap and hold on there. So in this instance, a lot of times people feel a lot of tightness in the hamstrings on the back of the thigh for the leg that's lengthened. If you feel that, just bend your knee, pop your foot behind the knee, and then just keep stretching into it. You want to try to get a really good stretch through the lower side back body as well as the leg a little bit. You're going to feel that. So I'll hold there, and then I'll release, and then I would switch it to the other side, just like that, and making that accommodation if you need to for your hamstrings. The strap really comes in super handy for this, and then I will hold it just for a few breaths so that I'm feeling comfortable. The next place that we're going to go into is the outer hip. So after I finish holding that for maybe one more breath, then I would release, and this time I'm going to take my right foot and cross it over the left leg. Now, if you feel your ankle kind of digging into your thigh, just slide it outward. And this is another one where if you have a lot of tightness in the hamstrings, you might want to just take like a book or a rolled up towel and place it behind your knee to lift it up a little bit. With a lengthened spine, you start to come forward into your stretch. So long, straight back, and you'll start to pick up that stretch in the outer right hip. And I'd hold it here for about a breath or two, and then I would release from there and switch it to the other side. So as you're watching this video, I'm kind of running through all of the stretches, but what you can do is pause the video while you're working a stretch and then bring it back online so that you can join the next one. And then when I release from there, I'm going to go ahead and stop here, hands on the shoulders, lifting up and around. And this is really a great tension tamer too. It feels super good. So you can do this any time of the day, and it helps open up the chest as well as increase that range of motion throughout the shoulders. So the last thing that we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be from a kneeling posture, working a lunge, and then for your hamstring stretch, and then into the hip flexor stretch. So hang on, I've got one more after that, and we're almost done. So from my kneeling posture, when I come up to this kneeling pose, I'm going to step my right foot forward and let it go as far as I can. And what I'm trying to do is get a stretch in the front of my left hip for the hip flexors. Then once I feel pretty anchored here, I'm going to take the left hand, which is the side where I'm stretching the front of the hip, and reach that up and over. And as I kick those hips forward, I'm really feeling a good stretch right in the front of that left hip. I'd hold this until I feel enough of the stretch. And then when I release, hands down to the floor, and I'm going to roll those toes up. So now as I bring the toes up, I'm getting the stretch right into those hamstrings. So I would hold this for a few breaths, comfortable. I'm going to talk about breath and length of time in just a second. and then I would release from there and switch it to the other side. So walking the left foot forward until I feel the stretch in the front of that right hip now, and then bring the right arm up and over, kind of kicking the hips forward, you can see, to get that stretch in the hip flexors. And then from there, I'm going to release, hands down to the mat, lift up those toes and roll it back so that I can feel that stretch right into those hamstrings. This is a good overall body sequence, which is why you can see it fits a lot of different athletic endeavors. Then from once I finish there, sit it back into my child's pose. And this is the last couple of stretches that we're going to do. I'm going to stretch out my right arm, bring the left arm underneath, and roll that shoulder in. I'm resting my forehead here. If it's uncomfortable for you to go that far, you can just ball up your fist and rest your forehead like so. Get a good stretch through that shoulder there. And then as you release from there, switch it to the other side, roll the shoulder in. And sometimes, we don't have a lot of range of motion or stretch. And if you don't worry about it. It will come in time. If you still don't find that you're increasing in your range of motion over time, as you release from here and come to a seated posture, it could very well be that you just have shorter muscles, ligaments, and whatnot, so that you might not. But keeping that flexibility is important. Last thing that I'm going to do from the stretch is I'm going to grab my strap again, and I'll fold it up in half, bring it behind me, squeeze the shoulder blades together, and lift that chest out and out. So when you talk about timing, it usually takes about at least a minute for your brain and muscles to start to connect, to start to truly stretch. So make sure, if you're not counting in breaths, go ahead and kind of give yourself a little bit of a timer and count at least 30 seconds to a minute for every single stretch. And don't be afraid to go back and revisit it. As I release from there, you should probably feel pretty darn loosened up. So thanks for joining me today for a few yoga stretches for all kinds of athletic endeavors, or just to feel a little better. Have a great day.